What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our course breakdown for this week's 3M Open. Gonna get you guys ready for TPC Twin Cities, everything to expect around this venue, to give you guys an idea of exactly what to research this week for your DFS lineups, any outright bets or placements. Let's get out there and get ready to crush our exposure. I know it's not a major week, but still one for the sweaty tryhards. We've got GPPs to take down, some outrights and bets and props that we can still make some money on. So if you guys are ready to dive on in, without further ado, let's get this thing started. TPC Twin Cities is a very scoreable course. It does look a little long at 7,400 yards, but it usually plays extremely soft this time of year, and we have a winning score that -17 to -24. So a par 71, it is typically a par 72 for players there. They do change hole 3 from a par 5 to a par 4, so that's how you get that math adding up. You've got bent grass agronomy from tip to toe, so bluegrass rough, which is listed at 4 inches this year, which is a little bit longer than where they usually have it, but you've got average sized greens, extremely soft too, so expect a very high green and regulation average, but a lot of water in play around this course. So that's the one thing that can really trip up players, because if you're keeping your ball in play, you're hitting a lot of greens, you're usually shooting something like -3 to -5. So if you can avoid that water, expect guys to post some pretty low scoring, and mainly with the averages, usually easier than your PGA Tour average. So your fairway rate about 3% higher than normal. Your green regulation rate is about 4% higher than what we're used to seeing. Scrambling rate also about 5% easier than what we're used to seeing. You get the point at this point. Birdies slightly higher than average, bogeys slightly lower than average, and that's what gives you this birdie fest setup. So last year you had Johnny Vegas getting that win, first time in a while that he had gotten into that winner's circle. But a lot of your putting specialists towards the top, a Grazeman, a Kuchar, McNeely, for example, you did have a few ball strikers like your Pendriths, your Fishburns that got into that top 6, but this is a golf course, because of the low scoring nature of it, that you want to be able to get to close to 20 under par. And even if you're the best ball striker in the world, if you don't have that putting that week, you're not going to have a good chance. So if we go to the year before that, that's when Lee Hodges won this thing. You also had a lot of short, more positional putters towards the top there as well. And Aaron Baddeley, Sam Ryder, great examples of that. Dylan Wu, Strowman, and JT Poston. Not the kind of players that we see at a ball striking fest. And, maybe that's changed for Poston over the last year or so, but back in 2023, when he wasn't quite the player that he is today, you liked him at putting first kind of courses. So when we take a look at some of the other analytics on Bet the Number, you can see you're only hitting driver on 11 of the 14 holes. And while it is better to be a bomber than not here with a 5.5 out of 10 ranking, it's not one that you have to be a bomber to find success. The approach distribution skews a little bit longer than some of the other birdie fests that we've seen. In fact, over 12 shots coming from 125 to 225. So compared to like the John Deere Classic Rocket Mortgage, which we'll talk through as comps later, a little bit of a longer approach distribution and less drivers around because of all the water. The around the green distribution is very straightforward, so not really anything to say there. And then putts get made in bunches around this golf course, so not a whole lot of undulations to them. They do run quicker than what we had at the Open Championship at Genesis Scottish Open, but even then, because there's not nearly as much undulation, they're much easier to putt. So overall, you put that all together, you get a pretty simple golf course, and that's why we get close to -20 every single year. Now let's go hole by hole, show you guys the shots that are required. So first off is the dogleg from left to right, one where you usually hit less than driver because it's short, even if you take a 3-wood or an iron, and the less that you take off the tee, the more fairway area that you're going to have to work with. But if you choose to take a driver here, you have less than 100 yards in to hole number 1. So a handshake, one that you don't even have to use the big stick on. Hole 2 is one of the harder holes on this golf course. You do have water down the right, which makes the bailout area to the left here, and though these look like very small trees to the left, and they're not massive oak trees or anything, they can block you out with your second shot in. So this will be in the top 5 most difficult holes, particularly if it plays into the wind. Hole 3 is the par 4 that has changed from the par 5, so this is going to be a very difficult hole. In fact, probably one of the top 3 or top 5 most difficult holes every single day. So 2 and 3, pretty brutal, and if you can get through that stretch, the rest of the golf course is pretty smooth sailing. Hole 4, 179-yard par 3. There is water technically down the left, but unless you've got a middle left or a back left pin location, probably not going to be a massive factor there. Hole 5 is 426, so another layup par 4. So this is one of those 3 holes off the tee where you're probably not going to be taking driver. 6 is 589, so this is a longer par 5. It is still reachable in 2 because of the angle off the tee. They have it at 280 over here, but the vast majority of the field is going to be hitting their tee shots closer to here, which if we set the second target on the green then is about 260 yards in, which means that as long as you're in the short stuff, almost everyone in the field will be going for it with their second. Hole 7 is 381, so another shorter par 4. This one is potentially drivable, especially if it's downwind, so, expect your Keith Mitchells, your Bombers to take that on if the conditions are right. Hole 8 is 206 yards. This is a longer par 3. Once again, technically the water's in play, but you'd have to go way over the back to get to that, so not going to be in play for most of the field. Hole 9 is 502 yards. This is one of the harder, longer par 4s out here, but because it is set up to be a par 4, you've got a very wide landing area, which helps these players out off the tee, and then the green is also relatively large, and, to the left side, it'll be maybe like 5th or 6th most difficult hole of the day, but to the back right pin location, which you can see is clearly the hardest one we can get there, then it might be one of the top 3 most difficult holes. Starting in the back, you get another handshake. In fact, another hole where you don't have to hit driver. Vast majority of the field probably won't take the big stick, but once again, depending on the wind direction, you might have players that are more aggressive, and the one thing that really keeps players, or a lot of players, from taking driver when that's the case would be that water down the right side. But if you bail out down the left, maybe you have a right side pin location, don't be surprised if people are taking that on. Next up, we have 11, which is 469. That is another mid-length par 4, and the thing I like about TPC Twin Cities is that on the harder holes, you get a wider landing area, in particular if you don't take the big stick. So your more accurate players, the players that are going to rely on their second shot accuracy more than their driving prowess, expect to see them take less than driver at 11 and then lean into that long iron in. Next up, we have 12, which is 586. This is another potentially reachable par 5, but once again, you have to be coming out of the short stuff, and though it does look like the water isn't in play on the right, because the predominant wind direction is downwind at 12, you will get some players that hit it into that penalty area, which of course you want to avoid at all costs. 13 is 218. This is another longer par 3. It is a relatively wide area towards the back, so believe it or not, a back pin location probably easier than the front side. 14 is 433, another layup par 4. This is one of the holes where there's really no incentive to taking driver. If you take a driver, it narrows up considerably. You also have that bunker down the right, and of course, water the whole way down the left. So expect this to be more of a positional hole for the players. 15 is 452, a slight, ever so slight dogleg from right to left, but another less than driver hole for a lot of players, because you can see that driver area really narrows up, and if it's going to be 4-inch rough this year, I would expect that decision to be even more so the case this time. 16 is 407 yards, so that is a pretty straightforward par 4. Pretty wide landing area though, so I do think you're going to see some drivers there. Next up, we have 17, which is 200 yards. That is a hole that you have water in play for sure. Not some of the other par 3s, it's really out of the way, and you'd have to hit a terrible shot to get there. Really, any sort of miss hit into 17, and it is squarely in play for this hole. And then finally, 18 is a finishing par 5. It is probably my favorite hole around this golf course. It's only reachable if you hit it down the right side of this fairway, and you absolutely have to be coming out of the fairway to go for it, especially with that 4-inch rough. And even if you do, if we set the target onto the green over there, it's 240 yards over the water. So you've got to have a pretty good number, a pretty good club to hit it there, because short is a no-go. You're going to see everyone air towards the long side, and then because the green slopes from back right to front left, it's a pretty difficult up and down to this back pin location. So a lot of strategy involved at hole number 18, and an absolute fun finish to this golf tournament. And now let's go through our comp courses and our modeling for this week. So we're going to go through the kind of key stats that I'm using to identify my top plays, and then some golf courses that'll play similar. I already mentioned a few of those, but we'll deep dive that a little bit more. But the key stats, I've got the 4 core shots gained categories on here first. That's off the tee, approach, around the green, and near putting. I will say that this is a pretty balanced golf course, not one where we really eliminate any one of those 4 categories. So they're all incorporated into the modeling relatively evenly, but not that much we have to talk about there, right? It's just form heading in. You always want form in your modeling, not really catered towards this golf course. But if you take a look at form, you're best off the tee players. You can see towards the top there, Gotterup, Thor Bjornsson, Cameron Champ, Nicholas Norgard, Moeller, all bombers, but this is a course where you can't really miss in that 4-inch rough all day, so they matter, but that's why we're going to look at accuracy a little bit later on. I also got approach play, so that's just regular shots gained approach heading in. You have the champion from 2 years ago at number 1 in the category, so don't sleep on Lee Hodges, but Bhatia, Coles, Doug Gim, Perez, Emiliano Grillo, Kevin Roy, this kind of form, particularly just shots gained approach, is probably the most important category that we have of the regular 4 shots gained. And around the green matters around here, particularly last year, you saw quite a bit of correlation to that, which I don't really understand, at least based on looking at the Birdie Fest conditions. It's not something that I would really expect, but maybe on those par 5s, those shorter par 4s that are drivable, it's the around the green and trying to convert it on birdies on those holes. You've also got regular shots gained to putting. We're going to look at some bent grass putting towards the end, which is the surface of the week, but putting form, always something you want to incorporate as well. So a Taylor Montgomery, Gordon Sargent, that is a young stud who hits the ball a long way. Keep an eye out for him. But Sammy Valimaki, Danny Willett, Sam Ryder, who's shown up at this golf course a few times before, Andrew Putnam and Kevin Yu also getting a whole lot to drop. So those are the regular shots gained categories. Now let's go through the stuff that really matters for this week. So first off, driving accuracy. I would say that if I could choose between a bomber and an accurate guy, that I would most likely want the accuracy guy this week, just because of the kind of rough that this listed. If it's going to be 4 inches, maybe even 5 inches by the end of the week, there's been a lot of rain in the area heading into this event, so it could be a little bit juicier here in 2025. I want to avoid the water, and I want guys that can attack the par fives by hitting those 300-yard drives in the fairway. So players like Paul Peterson, David Ford have been hitting the short stuff quite a bit. Players that we've maybe seen a little bit more would be a Putnam, a Joel Damon, your regular PGA Tour pros. Also Ben Coles, a Zach Johnson, and Emiliano Grillo getting a boost in the model for this week. And with the approach play, if we're going to focus on any sort of proximity bucket, there's 12 shots per round out of the 18, so literally 2/3 of them that are coming from 125 to 225. So if you're going to narrow it down to the shots gained in that range, I think that could be very helpful on a week like this. Brandon Valdez, and small sample size popper, so we have to take that with a grain of salt. But your Ben Coles, that's a regular PGA Tour pro. Same thing with an Antoine Rosner, Eric Van Rooyen, Lee Hodges once again showing up. And of course, as a past champion here, you like to see your past champions showing up at least in some point in your modeling. But a Henrik Norlander, Rico Hoey, also Matt McCarty, gaining to their baselines with those irons. So once again, just because there's 12 of the 18 shots, probably worth adding some emphasis there. And then we've got birdie or better percentage at a golf course like this that has such a low winning score every year. If we're going to get to 20 to 25 under par, which with the soft conditions, it looks like that's what's going to take here in 2025. We need players with the kind of firepower to do so. So a Michael Thorbjornsen with his elite tier form, maybe worth a few extra looks. A David Skins, an Antoine Rosner, a Jake Knapp. He's like number 6 on all of the PGA Tour in birdie or better percentage, and that's for the entire year, by the way. Whether you want to look at the last 24 rounds like I am, or even the entire season like you have with Knapp, I think all of that would be very useful too. And then finally, we've got the bent grass putting. So that, of course, is the surface of the week. Because this is a birdie fest, putting really matters. So not only do we have the putting form, but also the putting on the bent grass surface. Max Grazerman, who had a top tier finish at this event last year, in fact, probably should have won this event last year. 1.3 shots gained putting on bent. Sam Burns, one of the best putters on tour. He also had a top 12 finish at this course last year. Takumi Kanaya, Mackenzie Hughes, Cristobal de Solar. All these players that are into the dark green and the shots gained on bent grass, gonna get a significant bump this week. So if we put it all together, number 1 is Emiliano Grillo, who has a really good course history. So he's gone 2nd, 10th, and 24th. So anytime you have your number 1 in the modeling also with good course history, that tells us that we're looking at a lot of the right stats. Speaking of good course history, Cam Champ has gone 12th, 16th, and then won this event before in the past. So another player that you love to see towards the top here. Maybe a little bit of a newer face. Kevin Roy has not played here that much, but he's number 3. Sam Burns, number 4, top 12 in the modeling himself as well. Thorbjornsen, Whaley, Putnam, EVR, Ricky, and Chris Gotterup, all rounding out that top 10. So in terms of pricing, in terms of the outright betting market, these are going to be a lot of my first looks and a lot of my first players that I deep dive on a week like this. And then for our comp courses, I've got 3 that make sense. Number 1 would be the John Deere Classic, another birdie fest that's played on bent grass, another course where I would rather have accuracy over distance as well. And while there are things that change, like this is a course where you hit not that many drivers as well, so that's actually something that stays the same. The approach profile is a little bit shorter than what we have at the other golf course. So these aren't going to be perfect one-to-one comparisons, but still, I think worthy of looking for some of those top 5, top 10s. So you have Brian Campbell, who won there. Also, Emiliano Grillo, number 1 in the model this week. So that's another spot where he shows up. But look at that. Kevin Roy, he finished in 3rd at that event, and he was top 5 in our model for this week as well. So those are the kind of things that you like to see from these comp courses. Next up, we have the Rocket Mortgage Classic, which is another course where it's a birdie fest, approach distribution, a little bit shorter than you have this week, but one where you don't have to be a bomber to find success. But Aldrich Potgieter did win this year, of course, which was massive for our exposure. But even with Potgieter win, you still had a lot of short guys finishing in the top 10. For example, like Nico Echeverria, Chris Kirk aren't really known for that driving distance. You go to the year before that as well, it's even more so the case. Like you get a lot of these short guys like an Aaron Rise, not known for that distance, Eric Cole, etc., that still finish top 5, top 10. It's more so that it's a soft golf course, a birdie fest, that makes it a good comp course. And the same type of agronomy as well with that bent grass. And then finally, we have the Travelers Championship, another bent grass from tip to toe, and a shorter bent grass. fast track. So if this is a golf course where the accuracy is more important than the distance, then that's going to be a great comp course with the Travelers. You can see it's only a 2.7 out of 10 with the Bombers Paradise ranking, so probably a little bit more of an extreme example of that. Also, some shorter iron shots in, so that's kind of the same thing with all three of these courses, but that's how you get a winning score close to 24 under par. Now, I'd say the one thing that makes the Travelers a little bit of a worse comp compared to the other two would just be the fact that it's such an elite tier field. And of course, at the 3M Open, this isn't a major championship field by any means, or even close to a signature level field. So a lot of these players aren't even teeing it up at an event like this, but it does give us an idea of the types of players that find success, which in general are players that putt well on bent grass, that hit their irons well from the medium to shorter irons, and that's what we wanted this week as well. Alrighty guys, that's all I've got for this week's course breakdown. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also comment down below what you've got as the winning score for a chance to earn a free month of my Patreon, and it'll be on a first come first serve basis, so the first person to guess that correct winning score will win a free month access to all my projections and modeling. And on my Patreon page is where I post every single player in the field and their modeling, whether it comes to recent form, course history, also the shots gained metrics over the last 24 and last 12 measured rounds, giving you all the research and all the tools you need to go through the process and figure out exactly who you want to get over the field on, as well as all the exposure that I'm getting to. I've got my player pool over there, all my bets for the DFS side, underdog, prize picks, all the props I'm entering for rounds 1 through 4, a ton of content behind the Patreon paywall that you can get for free as long as you guess that winning score. So go ahead, claim your score before anyone else goes out there and steals it. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are getting to this week, whether it's on the DFS side or from the prop and betting side of things. I hope we can crush it for this, not signature event, but still PGA Tour event where there's a lot of money to be won. And I'll catch you guys for all the content throughout the week. That'll include our betting and DFS preview, which will be dropping a little bit later on this evening, as well as our live streams on Wednesday. That'll be DFS 7 p.m. on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be touching on props and bets for round 1 at this event. That'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. A bunch of those rounds 2 through 4. We have live streams as well covering showdown and props and betting for the rest of the event. A whole bunch to come here on the YouTube channel, so subscribe so you guys don't miss any of that. Best of luck with everything that you guys are going with, and I'll catch you guys for the content later on this evening.